रिसर्च शो करती है कि मर्द सुसाइडल अटैम्प्ट जो है उनका रेट ज़्यादा है, लेकिन औरतों का सुसाइडल थॉट्स उनके काफ़ी ज़्यादा है।
नमस्कार दोस्तों, मैं डॉक्टर योगेंद्र सिंह राठौर और इनर वेलनेस ट्राइब पॉडकास्ट का आज एक नया एपिसोड आप लोगों के लिए लेकर के आ रहा हूँ। आज हमारे बीच बहुत ही अमेजिंग गेस्ट मौजूद हैं। डॉक्टर नताशा जो कि क्लिनिकल साइकोलॉजिस्ट हैं, ब्रिटिश साइकोलॉजी सोसाइटी की मेंबर भी हैं और बहुत सारे क्वालिफिकेशंस इनके पास में हैं। आज ये हज़ारों लाखों लोगों को वेलनेस के पैटर्न्स कैसे क्रिएट करने हैं, डिसऑर्डर से कैसे बाहर आना है और एक हैप्पी, हेल्दी और जॉयफुल लाइफ कैसे क्रिएट करनी है, ये सिखाती हैं। टुडे वी आर वेरी लकी कि इन्होंने अपने कीमती समय में से कुछ समय हमारे लिए निकाला और आज हमें ये गाइड करेंगी कि किस तरीके से लोग अपने जीवन में वेलनेस के पैटर्न क्रिएट कर सकें। सो लेट्स वेलकम नताशा जी। थैंक यू सो मच नताशा जी फॉर कमिंग टू आवर शो। इट रियली मैटर्स अ लॉट टू अस कि आप लंदन से यहाँ पे अभी लाइव हमारे साथ में हैं। सो थैंक यू सो मच फॉर कमिंग।
Thank you so much for such a lovely welcome. I appreciate that. And thank you so much for having me and for giving me this opportunity as well. मैं काफ़ी excited हूँ our discussion के लिए, और जो questions वगैरह आप मुझसे पूछेंगे, थोड़ी nervous भी हूँ क्या आप I do get anxious about public speaking, but let's see how it goes. I'm really excited. So thank you for having me.
थैंक यू। सो नताशा जी, हाउ इट स्टार्टेड कि इस डायरेक्शन में क्या कोई ऐसा इवेंट हुआ, कुछ ट्रिगर हुआ जिससे आपने डिसीजन लिया कि आपको मेंटल हेल्थ की डायरेक्शन में ही करियर बनाना है, लोगों को हेल्प करना है इस डायरेक्शन में? सो हाउ इट स्टार्टेड, इफ़ यू कैन शेयर द जर्नी।
मैं हमेशा लॉ में इंटरेस्टेड थी, तो ग्रेड 12 तक मैंने ठान ली थी कि मुझे लॉ करना है। मेरे नाना अब्बू, नानी अम्मी, मेरे अम्मी अब्बू कह रहे थे नहीं डॉक्टर बनो, मेडिकल डॉक्टर, द क्लासिक प्रोफेशंस इन द साउथ एशियन कम्युनिटी, या तो डॉक्टर बनो या अकाउंटेंट बनो या इंजीनियर। मैं फैमिली लॉ में काफ़ी इंटरेस्टेड थी। आई वांटेड टू बिकम अ फैमिली लॉयर। फिर ग्रेड 12 में मैंने एक कोर्स लिया, एंड Freud, who is quite controversial figure within the field of psychology, and he made me think in terms of the stages of development and the ego, super ego, id. तो मैं काफ़ी इंटरेस्ट मैंने साइकोलॉजी में लिया, और फिर मैंने बैचलर्स मैंने साइकोलॉजी में किया, एंड द मोर आई गॉट टू लर्न अबाउट साइकोलॉजी, मैंने नोटिस किया कि काफ़ी ये जो प्रॉब्लम्स और कंसर्न्स हैं ये साउथ एशियन कम्युनिटी में क्वाइट कॉमन है, or the lack of understanding and knowledge about mental health within the South Asian community is quite limited. और काफ़ी स्टिग्मा भी है। लोग यूजुअली साउथ एशियन कम्युनिटी में हम लोग कहते हैं ओ ये पागल है, इसलिए पागलों के डॉक्टर के पास जाता है। अभी तक मैंने डॉक्टरेट कर लिया, मेरी अम्मी अभी भी बिलीव करती हैं कि मैं पागलों के साथ काम करती हूँ। मेरी अम्मी क्या, मेरी फुल एक्सटेंडेड फैमिली कहती है पागलों के डॉक्टर, नहीं, and I'm like at this point I'm just tired of explaining what I actually do. तो वो स्टिग्मा हटाने के लिए और अवेयरनेस स्प्रेड करने के लिए I really kind of took this path, and one of my mission is to really address the stigma around mental health within the South Asian community, and to really tackle the toxic patterns, the intergenerational patterns around gender roles, around trauma, around relationships, marriage, parenting, and how we can try to kind of think about it in a different way, in a healthier way. So yeah, that's why I chose this path, and I love what I do. I'm really passionate about it, and I love it's just really, really rewarding.
लवली। आई थिंक ये बहुत अच्छा पॉइंट आपने यहाँ पे बताया कि, और स्पेशली इंडिया में तो मैं खुद देखता हूँ कि अगर बॉडी में कुछ इशू है तो पीपल आर वेरी फ्री एंड बहुत आराम से बता सकते हैं किसी को भी कि इशू है, बट व्हेन इट कम्स टू मेंटल इश्यूज लोग बताते भी नहीं हैं, बहुत देर तक छुपाते हैं। सो क्या लोगों को करना चाहिए, इसके बारे में आप क्या पर्सपेक्टिव नए दे सकते हैं जिससे कि ये स्टिग्मा थोड़ा ब्रेक हो, लोग थोड़े ज़्यादा फ्रीली बात कर सकें इसके बारे में? इनफैक्ट अगर मैं आपसे कहूँ कि ये इनिशिएटिव जो इनर वेलनेस ट्राइब हमने शुरू किया वो भी इसी का ही एक मकसद है कि इसके बारे में बातें की जाए और लोग ज़्यादा फ्रीली बात करें और इसको एक ऐसा कोई स्टिग्मा ना समझें कि ये कोई बहुत बड़ी चीज़ है और इसके बारे में बात नहीं करना चाहिए. सो व्हाट इज़ योर पर्सपेक्टिव ऑन दैट?
I think what you're doing is such a great initiative, or जो आप space देते हैं to talk about these important conversations. It's really, really helpful to spread that awareness. I think अगर healthcare system से start हो जाए, जो first point of contact, जो a lot of family doctors, GPs, अगर वो educate करें अपने patients को और वो stigmatize ना करें अपने patients को, because I've seen that even in Canada, in the UK, where you go to the family doctor कहते हैं ओ कोई नहीं है, बस ये situation की वजह से है, बाद में ठीक हो जाओगे, ये बस medication ले लो ठीक है. And then patient feels like, okay, it took a lot of courage for me to even share this with you, and then you're just asking me that, okay, you know what, kind of brushing it off, and that doesn't help. वो बंदे की invalidate कर देती है, उनका experience invalidate कर देते हैं, वो फिर कहते हैं कि रहने दो, maybe I'm just overthinking. तो वो फिर patient फिर self doubt करता है. अगर हम family doctors से ले लें, वो अगर educated हो around mental health और stigmatize ना करें और promote करें mental health को, really listening to their patient can help them to connect them to the right resources. Community में अगर हम लोग देखें यानी कि मंदिर में या फिर मस्जिद में जो community centers हैं, spiritual leaders, लोग काफ़ी उनको मानते हैं. कोई भी यानी कि लाइफ में कोई adversity हो, प्रॉब्लम हो, तो वो पहले अपने spiritual leader के पास जाते हैं और उनसे पहले consult करते हैं. I think they can also help us to spread that mental health awareness, to educate them about mental health, and also to signpost them to the right resource, to professionals, right? Educating about in terms of how physical symptoms can overlap with medical condition, but also mental health as well. So, for example, anxiety में usually chest में काफ़ी tightness होती है, heavy breathing होती है, and that's one feeling anxious. कभी कभार वो misinterpret हो जाता है कि asthma है लोगों को, या फिर कुछ कोई और medical condition है. और a lot of people, when they come to their family doctor, वो ये नहीं कहेंगे कि मैं anxious हूँ या depression हूँ, क्योंकि हमारी community, हमारे culture में language भी नहीं है mental health के लिए कि मैं depressed हूँ या मैं anxious हूँ. तो वो language जो है वो हमें promote करनी है. तो a lot of people, what they say is, ओ मेरे सर में दर्द हो रही है, मुझे बेड से उठा नहीं जा रहा, मैं सो नहीं पा रही. So it's more physical symptoms that they talk about rather than the psychological symptoms. And what doctors can do, they can probe more, they can ask more questions to really understand the underlying issue, which is more of the psychological symptoms.
Perfect. I think that's a good thing. I think yeah, at education level, right, in childhood, if they start teaching these things, it will be very good, right? तो क्योंकि बचपन से ही अगर नॉर्मलाइज कर दिया इस चीज़ को, तो आई थिंक वंस दे ग्रो अप इट विल बी बेटर फॉर देम. ब्यूटिफुली एक्सप्लेन्ड. क्या लगता है आपको कि अगर हम राइट नाउ सिनारियो देखें, स्पेशली आफ्टर पेंडेमिक अगर देखें, तो डिप्रेशन के केसेस बहुत बढ़ गए हैं, एंग्जाइटी बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ चुकी है, सुसाइडल केसेस इतने ज़्यादा हैं, और ओवरऑल जो स्ट्रेस लेवल हों या फिर मेंटल इमोशनल इश्यूज जो है वो सिग्निफिकेंटली इंक्रीज हो गए हैं. सो व्हाट कुड बी द रीज़न, व्हाई डू यू थिंक दैट दिस हैज़ इंक्रीज सो मच? ये इश्यूज इंक्रीज भी हो गए हैं, एट द सेम टाइम थोड़ी बहुत अवेयरनेस भी अब आने लगी है कि लोगों ने अब इसको प्रायोरिटी देना शुरू भी किया है इस इफ़ेक्ट की वजह से. सो कोजेज़ क्या लगते हैं आपको कि क्या है जो इतना ज़्यादा ये इश्यूज बढ़ रहे हैं? कोई लाइफस्टाइल की वजह से, सोशल मीडिया की वजह से, या व्हाट डू यू थिंक कोई अनसर्टेनिटीज़ बहुत आ चुकी हैं, इसलिए क्या लगता है आपको?
Such an important question. And it's people are reflecting a lot. So pandemic से पहले लोगों की काफ़ी busy lives थी, and kind of go. और उनके पास time नहीं था कि वो let's step back, let's reflect on how I'm actually living my life. I think the pandemic really forced us to self-reflect. घर पे सारे बंद थे, बाहर जा नहीं सकते थे, किसी से मिल नहीं सकते थे, feeling quite isolated and lonely. Or these two are usually symptoms of depression. But because of the situation, हम trap हो गए थे, or a lot of people were forced to isolate क्योंकि coronavirus की वजह से. We were forced to stay isolated. हर किसी के अपने अपने bubble थे. और उन बबल्स में कभी कभार कुछ लोग जो है वो टॉक्सिक मैरिजेस में, टॉक्सिक रिलेशनशिप्स में भी ट्रैप थे, और डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस काफ़ी इंक्रीज हो गया था। सुसाइड रेट इंक्रीज इतना नहीं हुआ था, which is surprising, क्योंकि a lot of people were thinking that, oh, maybe suicide risk might have been increased. A lot of people were having suicidal thoughts, but they didn't act on it. In terms of mental health in general, I think a lot of people became more aware. लोग काफ़ी सोच रहे थे अपने बारे में कि ये मैं ऐसे क्यों फील कर रहा हूँ। और आपको अगर ये लास्ट 2-3 years में हम इतने बिजी हो गए थे because a lot of people are just forthcoming with mental health, or South Asian population, क्योंकि हमारा clinic जो है 90% of our clientele is South Asian. And I would get so happy, not that they're struggling, but the fact that they're so forthcoming कि अपने mental health को prioritize कर रहे थे, क्योंकि काफ़ी हमारे लोग जो है वो लोग नहीं help, they don't want to seek help. वो कहते हैं वो जो घर की बात है घर में रखो। तो इसलिए now after the pandemic, what's happening is, एक तो life is getting expensive. लोग जो है वो घर में उनको आदत हो गई थी कि घर से काम करें, और अब जो transition जो है going back to office, it's quite difficult for people. People are struggling with social anxiety, so kind of घबराहट होती है अब अगर social situations में। काफ़ी अब paranoia भी हो गया है कुछ लोगों को कि अगर ये वायरस पहले था तो अब पता नहीं कोई और बीमारी आ जाए और मेरे हेल्थ पे कैसे अफेक्ट करेगी। काफ़ी लोगों ने अपने फैमिली मेम्बर्स को भी लूज़ किए थे बिकॉज ऑफ कोरोना वायरस, तो उनकी वजह से भी काफ़ी उनको यानी कि और पैरानोया हो जाएगा। तो इसलिए इट्स हार्ड फॉर देम टू काइंड ऑफ जस्ट ट्रांजिशन बैक टू देयर नॉर्मल लाइफ। और जो नॉर्मल लाइफ, जो भी नॉर्मल लाइफ है, अगर वो अपनी लाइफ पहले जो उनकी थी वो अगर उनको काफ़ी स्ट्रेसफुल लग रही थी और अब वो अपनी लाइफ में कुछ चेंजेस लाना चाह रहे हैं या रिलेशनशिप में चेंजेस लाना चाह रहे हैं, it is quite a lot to change and to reflect on. And a lot of people are feeling overwhelmed because of that self-awareness.
Nice. Yeah, so I think there is a lot of uncertainty as well in all the areas. If we look at during this pandemic, relationship, people are facing uncertainties, business, career, jobs, they were losing jobs, and the uncertainty was contributing a lot to all these issues, right? Or in fact, when they are transitioning from their current state to desired state, they face so many psychological barriers and resistance. And many times, I believe they are not equipped properly to deal with the stress or to the uncertainty that is going on in their mind. I think that is where coaches or therapists or people like you come into picture, where they can go and they can take help so that one can help them to make their transition they are looking for.
Yeah. I think you're right in terms of I think nobody was equipped to deal with coronavirus. It was such a big adversity. I think the last one was in like 1920s or something. A lot of people were feeling a bit out of control, huge loss, a lot of grieving, and all of that can be quite overwhelming to process. And for a lot of people, it was a traumatic experience as well, and might have developed post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's really, really important to have a safe space in therapy to process a lot of these things that they went through.
So, if we look at suicides, so what goes inside the head of a person who is suicidal? क्या इनिशियल ऐसे सिम्टम्स होते हैं, जो क्या इनिशियल ट्रिगर्स होते हैं जहाँ से ये थॉट चालू होता है, और कैसे आसपास के लोग आइडेंटिफाई कर सकें कि इफ़ समथिंग इज़ रॉन्ग? कोई सिग्नल तो मिलता होगा, कोई सिम्टम तो ऐसा शायद वो एक्सप्रेस करते होंगे जो अगर आसपास के लोग अवेयरनेस रखें तो शायद हेल्प कर सकें। वो डू यू थिंक अबाउट इट?
काफ़ी ट्रिकी क्वेश्चन है, क्योंकि हर इंडिविजुअल का अपना एक्सपीरियंस होता है, अपनी ट्रिगर्स होती हैं, कॉजेज होती हैं। तो इस यानी कि कोई इट्स द आंसर इज नॉट गोना बी ब्लैक एंड वाइट। तो क्या होता है कि सम पीपल दे डोंट इवन हैव टू हैव मेंटल हेल्थ कंसर्न्स। कुछ यानी कि ड्रास्टिक हो जाता है, कुछ चेंज हो जाता है उनकी लाइफ में, एंड टू द पॉइंट वेयर दे कैन नॉट कोप विद इट, and then that might result in having suicidal attempt. रिसर्च शो करती है कि मर्द जो हैं वो ज़्यादा सुसाइडल अटैम्प्ट जो है उनका रेट ज़्यादा है औरतों से, लेकिन औरतों का जो है वो suicidal thoughts उनके काफ़ी ज़्यादा है. So some people will have suicidal thoughts and suicide, and then they will act on those thoughts. And men are more likely to do that, and it's quite severe. Whereas women, they will have suicidal thoughts, but sometimes they might not act on it, or the means of doing it might be a bit more, which might not have a successful kind of suicide attempt. So it's really tricky. And then a lot of people will also engage in self-harm as well. And some of these words might be triggering for some people, so I do apologize. But some people might engage in self-harm, such as maybe cutting, slapping themselves, pulling their hair, scratching, any kind of bodily harm, which may or may not result in suicide attempt, but it is self-harm. And research shows that people who engage in self-harm, they have a higher risk of engaging in suicide attempt. So suicide is quite common with people who are severely depressed, in borderline personality. It's one of the symptoms, and also in other mental health conditions as well, but also physical too. So, for example, arthritis, there's a lot of research that people who are in severe physical pain, sometimes because of that pain that they cannot bear, that might result in suicide attempt. What people can do is kind of notice the changes in the person. Let's say बंदा जो है वो काफ़ी extrovert है, आता जाता था बाहर और यानी कि लोगों के साथ interact करता था, and you're seeing that person is not doing that anymore. Or even if
Isolate
they're
हो रहा है.
doing, yeah. So any kind of change in personality, but a lot of people, they mask it as well. लोग बाहर जाएंगे, हंसेंगे, लेकिन कुछ कहेंगे नहीं. और वो लोग जो है काफ़ी ट्रिकी होते हैं, क्योंकि आप फिर उनको नोटिस नहीं कर सकते, क्योंकि वो they just carry on with life, and at the same time they still have really like vulnerability and those concerns. आप नोटिस करें कि वो क्या कह रहे हैं. Sometimes as a joke they'll say something कि अगर मैं यहाँ पे ना होता तो तुम क्या करते, तुम मुझे मिस करोगे या नहीं. Pick up on that, because that's not a joke.
Right.
Ask them, question them कि यार ये जोक तो नहीं है, मुझे तो जोक नहीं लग रहा है, कुछ हो रहा है क्या, do you want to talk about something? And they're like नहीं मुझे कुछ ऐसा नहीं, मैं जोक कर रहा था. But just notice and like get in touch with them, stay in contact with them, and see if there's any way they might open up to you, because a lot of people, they might not open up, and that's dangerous, because they're not going to share, because they are afraid of being judged. और हमारी community में जो बिल्कुल और हमारी community में, and in some countries suicide is illegal, crime है. जैसे अगर आप जाएं UAE में, पहले suicide जो था crime था, और now it's not a crime, but before it was, and a lot of people won't say it. So I think it's really, really important to have that safe space where they can open up to you and to build that relationship with them without judging them.
Perfect. So I think observation is important, that the people around you, they should observe their behavior as well, कि अगर वो कुछ personality में changes आ रहे हैं क्या, plus the way they are talking, और कुछ isolate कर रहे हैं या बातों में नज़र आ रहा है क्या. Okay, good. और I think कुछ helplines, especially telephonic lines जो होती हैं, अगर ऐसा भी कुछ system और ज़्यादा फोकस किया जाए, जो कि anonymous बन के आप शायद बात कर सकते हैं, जहाँ आपको अपनी आइडेंटिटी नहीं देनी है. तो जैसा आपने राइटली कहा कि ये जो जजमेंट का इशू आता है, ये एक बहुत बड़ा इशू है कि कई लोग छुपा जाते हैं, बताते नहीं है कि मुझे जज करेंगे. सो आई थिंक दैट इज़ क्रूशल. I was once reading somewhere that there are even many types of suicide. So what is that? Is it taught in psychology? Is it a research based thing, or it just an observation that people say that one is like euthanasia, where person wants to request that please kill me, and sometime it is distressful suicide, जहाँ पे कोई traumatic event हो गया है. कई बार लोग कहते हैं कि आप किस कल्चर में अगर इम्पैक्ट आया है, जिस माहौल में आप रह रहे हैं वहाँ इतना ज़्यादा प्रेशर है, या फिर कोई फूड प्रॉपरली अवेलेबल नहीं है, तो रिसोर्सेज की कमी की वजह से भी कई लोग ट्रिगर हो जाते हैं, जो फैटलिस्टिक सुसाइड जिसे लोग कहते हैं. सो इज़ देयर एनी क्लासिफिकेशन एज वेल दैट in terms of suicides?
So I did my doctorate in looking at the suicide attempts, but mainly in youth, or we looked at in terms of kind of using digital intervention. But in terms of what you're describing, is those are the causes of suicide, right? Suicide, the definition is that intentionally you're ending your life. And with all the experiences that you've mentioned, the outcome is that the person is ending their life. Medically assisted suicide, कुछ countries में legal है, कुछ countries में legal नहीं है. And even then, for a medical professional to make that decision, they have to go through a lot of protocols and process, second decision, second opinion, सब कुछ. वो इतनी आसान डिसीजन नहीं होती है और उसका फुल लीगल प्रोसेस होता है. और जो लोग when they attempt suicide or complete suicide because of limited resources, and के खाना वगैरह नहीं है या फिर financial crisis, वो at the end, again, the outcome is still they're ending their life, or they're ending whoever family, and it was sadly, yes, that's the thing. But in my training, I think it's overall the umbrella is suicide, and these are the causes and triggers that people experience, adversities that people experience that result in suicide. Does that make sense?
Yes, of course it is. So I think on the basis of triggers and causes, they have tried to classify it into different things. That's what people are actually doing. So suppose if somebody is going through these suicidal thoughts and all, क्या 2-3 बातें ऐसी जो खुद के साथ कर सकते हैं कि what they can do about it, कि हमने ये तो देखा कि आसपास के लोग कैसे ऑब्जर्व कर सकते हैं. Now suppose इंसान इंट्रोवर्ट भी है, शेयर भी नहीं करना चाह रहा है, तो इंडिविजुअली वो क्या कर सकता है आपके अकॉर्डिंग, जो उसको शायद मदद करे बाहर आने में?
I think it's really important that बंदा अपने वैल्यूज को पहले सेल्फ रिफ्लेक्ट करे कि उनकी वैल्यूज क्या है, उनके लॉन्ग टर्म गोल्स क्या है अपने लिए. और कभी कभार क्या होता है, लोगों के स्पिरिचुअल वैल्यूज जब होते हैं, that's such a big protective factor for people not to act on their thoughts. जब वो यानी कि अपने जो भी उनके रिलीजन और स्पिरिचुअल वैल्यूज है, वो अगर उनको यानी कि उनके साथ really connect करें, so praying or whatever it is, and if they start to do more of that, that brings them a bit of kind of peace and healing. I wouldn't say always, but it's there. A lot of times self-talk, encouraging self-talk can be helpful. Journaling can be helpful. So लोग अपने यानी कि जो सोच वगैरह, thoughts वगैरह, जो pain है, वो पेपर पे अगर write करें, and research shows that once you externalize a lot of that on a paper, when it's out of your body, it helps you to process what you're going through. अगर helpline available है, anonymous जैसे आपने बोला था, अगर वो available है तो आप उन्हें call कर सकते हैं और किसी और से बात कर सकते हैं. It doesn't have to be your family or friend if you don't want to. तो उनसे अगर आप बात कर लें तो वो आपके लिए additional support available है. Self affirmations can be another one. So अपने आप को ऐसा कुछ कहें जो आपको hope दे कि no, this is not going to last forever, and I can be gentle with myself, and I'm doing the best that I can. That's one of my favorite ones when I'm feeling really, really down and having a really difficult day. Just being gentle with yourself. Show that self-compassion and self-kindness to yourself. मैं हमेशा अपने clients को कहती हूँ, अगर आपका friend ऐसे यानी कि difficult time पे होता तो आप उन्हें क्या कहते? And they come up with so many like kind words and so much compassion for other people. And then I'm like, what are you struggling with? Why can't you say some of these things? तो वो अगर अपने आप को कुछ kindness or self-compassion show करें, that might also help. And just remember that it's not going to last forever. It's a feeling which will be temporary, depending on, of course, the environment as well that is triggering it. अगर वो toxic environment में है, तो उनके लिए काफी difficult होगा. But there is hope, and they can continue to hold on to that hope.
Beautifully explained, Natasha जी, बहुत beautifully. So कई बार जो जैसे feelings है हमारे, so how person disconnect with that feeling? So many times they think that feeling it feels very real, it is there, and many times it starts to drive you. It starts to drive your choices and decisions. So how in those moments, if the feeling is intense, what we can do to detach with that feeling? Any affirmation that you do, or what person can do in those moments, especially when they are totally entangled with the feeling, how they can disentangle and observe it from outside? So how it can be done?
Sorry, is that related to like suicidal thoughts or any other
Any
feeling
kind of
as well?
feeling,
Any
any
kind of
kind of
feeling.
feeling, yeah.
Okay. Okay. If it's suicidal thoughts and the thoughts are really, really intense, मैं strongly encourage करूँगी कि आप जो nearest hospital emergency है आप उधर जाए, so you can be safe, right? Get medical attention right away. ठीक है? अगर कोई और feeling है जैसे anxiety है या sadness है या guilt है, shame है, तो ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? First, name the emotion, and research shows that अगर आप सिर्फ ये बोल दे कि I'm feeling sad, just even saying the name of the emotion, it brings down the intensity of emotion by 30%, which is huge.
Lovely.
क्योंकि आपकी awareness हो जाती है कि मैं sad feel कर रहा हूँ, मैं उदास हूँ, या मैं यानी कि थोड़ा सा घबराहट हो रही है. Just even saying that, it brings down the emotion a bit. फिर अगर आप सोचें, मैं हमेशा जब क्लाइंट्स के साथ काम करती हूँ, मैं उनको कहती हूँ, अच्छा अगर आप उदास हैं तो आप ऑन द स्केल ऑफ 1 to 5 कितने उदास हैं आप? 5 इज़ लाइक मुझे बेड से नहीं निकलना. 1 इज़ लाइक मैं काम पे चला जाता हूँ, कोई नहीं है लेकिन मैं मैनेज कर लूँगा. ठीक है? तो वो जब मुझे रेटिंग देते हैं उस स्केल पे, तो मैं अगर कहती हूँ, वो कहते हैं 5 है, तो मैं कहती हूँ ओके, ट्राई टू मे बी गो आउट फॉर अ वॉक, डू समथिंग एक्टिव विद सैडनेस. क्योंकि सैडनेस क्या होता है, हमारा अर्ज जो होता है, द बिहेवियरल अर्ज दैट इज एसोसिएटेड विद सैडनेस is to isolate ourselves, to stay in bed all day sometimes. And that's
Do
not
nothing,
for every single
just
person.
yeah,
Yeah.
just you
Sorry,
just
what
don't
was-
want to do anything, like
Yeah. You just don't want to do anything. You just want to stay in bed. But that's again different for every single person, how they experience sadness. तो फिर हम लोग क्या करते हैं in therapy? We talk about act opposite to that emotion if sadness is not justified based on facts. तो facts क्या है? क्यों आप उदास फील कर रहे हैं? ठीक है? कभी कभार हम लोग confuse हो जाते हैं कि our feelings are facts. Our feelings are not facts. Feelings are feelings. ठीक है? लोग कहते हैं कि कभी कभार हमारी सोच, जो थॉट्स होते हैं, वो भी फैक्ट्स हैं. वो हमारी फैक्ट्स नहीं है, वो सिर्फ सोच है हमारी. The way we look at the world, the way we interpret things, that's our thoughts. These are not facts. अगर मैं कहें आपका ये प्लांट जो है ये ग्रीन है,
जी,
that's a fact. अगर मैं
Right.
कहूँ ब्लू है, तो आप कहेंगे नताशा क्या हो गया, ये ग्रीन है. तो वो मेरी इंटरप्रिटेशन है. ठीक है? तो हम फिर देखते हैं कि उनका जो बिहेवियर है, वो उसको कैसे हम लोग ऑपोजिट एक्शन करेंगे. And this is more from dialectical behavioral therapy techniques, which is emotion regulation skills. Act opposite to your emotion if your emotion is not based on facts.
lovely. Even I'm getting clarity on this. No, that's really good. Right. So technically, you said that dialectical emotional therapies, right? Beautiful.
Dialectical behavioral therapy, yeah.
Yeah, dialectical behavior therapy. So in sadness, you said that they can move. So 2-3 more example, if you can give. If somebody is suppose feeling grief or some other emotions, what could be the opposite thing they can do in that situation? For sadness, you said that you should move, right? You should move your body.
Just kind
For
of
in
get
case of sadness,
active, do something. Yes. And then once you figure out that sadness is not justified, then do something opposite to that. Anger. एक तो हमारे साउथ एशियन लोग गुस्सा, that's the only way they communicate. Yeah. जो भी बात हो जाती है, जो गुस्सा, yelling, screaming, our parents, that's their way of communication, right?
Yeah.
There's no other way to communicate.
Yes.
So गुस्सा जो होता है, anger जो होती है, again, if it's 5 out of 5, something that we call distress tolerance skills, जाए और एक बोल ले, बोल में आप थोड़ा सा पानी डालें और फिर खूब सारी आइस डालें उसमें.
okay.
Fill the bowl with like lots of ice. ठीक है? Don't do this if you have any heart condition or any of that. Please don't do that, and consult with your doctor before you do it. तो उसमें फिर आपको क्या करना है कि ये आपने अपना सर डुबोना है उस बोल में, और कोशिश करें कि ये आपकी फोरहेड, ये आईज और ये नोज यहाँ तक जो है ये फुल कवर हो, ठीक है। अपने आप अपना फेस डुबो कर और 30 seconds you have to stay there in the freezing cold water.
ओके
ठीक है। उससे क्या होता है कि anger or with anger our body gets really really hot. So the body temperature is really hot. So this technique helps us to change the body temperature.
ओके
And when the body temperature changes, anger decreases eventually.
राइट
क्योंकि आपकी सेंसेशन के अब अगर मैं आपको अभी बोलूं कि बोल में आप अपना सर डंक करें तो आप where is going to be your focus?
in this area only, in the coldness, the cold that I'm experiencing.
The cold that you're experiencing. You're not going to be thinking about who made you angry or who pissed you off. You're going to be focusing on that specific sensation. And that is a distraction technique, but I wouldn't use it all the time. I would only use it if anger is 5 out of 5.
Okay.
Or you can do cold shower. Just go into a cold shower. Or if you're in public, of course, आप अपने साथ बोल तो थोड़ी carry करेंगे. Go to the bathroom, just turn on the tap of cold water, and then just kind of like run the cold tap water on your wrist. So any of the pulses, so try to run the cold water and just focus on the sensation of coldness on your wrist. Yep, just splash cold water on your face, and that can help as well. सारी लड़कियां कह रही होंगी मैंने मेकअप किया है, मैं क्या करूंगी, मेरा मेकअप खराब हो जाएगा.
So उनके लिए कोई दूसरी टेक्निक है हमारे पास? Because see, state anger is an internal state, right? So if temperature is one of the aspect, breathing is also an aspect, or heartbeat is also an aspect. So even the facial expressions are also the aspect, right?
बिल्कुल.
So can there be other ways as well where maybe we change the breathing or relax the face or forehead? Can it be done in that way as well?
जो आप डिस्क्राइब कर रहे हैं वो ऑपोजिट एक्शन है एंगर के लिए. तो पहले डिस्ट्रेस टॉलरेंस स्किल्स आपने यूज कर लिए, ठीक है. तो आप फिर when you're in that state it's really hard for you to rationalize. क्योंकि क्या होता है जब हम लोग गुस्से में होते हैं तो the prefrontal cortex, which is usually responsible for planning, decision making, rationalization, it shuts down completely. तो वो amygdala जो होता है, जो center of emotion है, वो काफी activated होता है. तो पहले उसको हम calm down करेंगे. फिर क्या करेंगे जब वो intensity थोड़ी नीचे आ जाती है on that scale, let's say from 5 it came down to 3. फिर मैं I will ask myself, किस बात पे मुझे गुस्सा आ रहा है? What are the facts that are actually making me angry? And I'm only focusing on facts. I'm not focusing on what I think of the situation or how I wanted the situation to be. मैं सिर्फ सोचूंगी कि क्या हुआ है, कौन उस situation में था, उस बंदे ने ऐसा क्या कहा, word to word, whatever that person said, that made me angry. ठीक है? अगर उस fact पे वाकई मुझे गुस्सा आ रहा है, then I'm going to problem solve. And with problem solving, I'm going to figure out how I can make sure the situation doesn't happen. Whether that's me setting boundaries with that person, whether that's me reevaluating my relationship with that person. ठीक है? अगर वो emotion facts पे नहीं based है और मुझे जो गुस्सा आ रहा है क्योंकि मुझे situation नहीं अच्छी लगी लेकिन facts मुझे गुस्सा नहीं दिला रहे, then I'm going to act opposite to that emotion. So I'm going to relax my face. Instead of like this, I'm going to try to relax. I'm going to relax my jaw. I'm going to relax my my shoulders. I'm going to sit straight as if I'm a confident person. I might do some deep breathing, but I'm going to stay in that state for at least few minutes. उसमें क्या होता है, हम अपने brain को trick कर रहे हैं. You know what? Life is good. Everything is good. I'm not angry. तो brain क्या करता है? Okay, ठीक है. क्योंकि that physical body change is helping your brain to kind of de-escalate the situation.
Right.
And your nervous system is sending a bit more, it's more calm. Instead of that fight or flight response, it's more kind of calm and you're in peace, if that makes sense.
Yes, of course. It is more clear now. It is more clear. So, हम बात करते समय रिलेशनशिप का और टॉक्सिसिटी के भी टॉपिक कई बार आए. So how to identify if somebody is in a toxic relationship? Many times बहुत ज़्यादा वक्त लग जाता है लोगों को ये समझने में कि टॉक्सिसिटी है रिश्ते के अंदर. तो वो क्या रेड फ्लैग्स होते हैं जो शुरुआती दिनों में ही एक रिश्ते में होते हैं, जो इनिशियली इंसान टॉलरेट लव के नाम पे टॉलरेट करता रहता है, और फिर जब वो बहुत बढ़ जाता है तो उसके बाद में इट बिकम्स टू लेट फॉर देम टू कम out of it. So how to identify toxicity, and then how we can set boundaries or how we can deal with it?
I think एक strong relationship or healthy relationship में respect बहुत important है. People say trust, people say love, friendship and all of that. I think number one जो है respect. अगर बंदा आपकी respect नहीं कर रहा है, then there's not going to be trust. There's not going to be that kind of safe space to be vulnerable. आप फिर यानी कि tiptoes बंदे के around करेंगे, you're going to be walking on eggshells. तो अगर respect नहीं है तो step back and reevaluate that relationship if this is something that you want. Inconsistency. अगर बंदा consistent नहीं है, reliable नहीं है when you need them especially, then it is going to be really hard to build a healthy partnership. क्योंकि अगर आप सोच रहे हैं कि ये relationship marriage में हो जाए, तो marriage is a partnership and both partners are going to be facing so much adversities. पर अगर आपका partner reliable नहीं है, consistent नहीं है, you're going to feel isolated and alone in those experiences.
Right.
Right. और दूसरी है communication, lack of communication. अगर communication नहीं है, तो it's going to be really hard for you to express your needs and concerns in a relationship. And then also you cannot mind read what your partner needs from you. Relationship में जब मैं couples के साथ काम करती हूँ, तो हमेशा couple कहते हैं कि well, हमारे 10 साल हो गए हैं शादी को, he should know it by now. And I'm like, yes, he's a psychic, he's gonna know everything that you're thinking.
ये बहुत ज़्यादा ये जो एक अनरियलिस्टिक एक्सपेक्टेशन कपल्स में हो जाती है कि बिना कहे समझना चाहिए. मतलब हमने इतनी मुश्किल से लैंग्वेज इन्वेंट करी है, बनाई है, ताकि हम जो अंदर है वो एक्सप्रेस कर सकें, बट फिर भी लोग समहाउ ये एक्सपेक्टेशन रखते हैं कि माइंड रीड हो जाए और अपने आप पता लगे. So how to deal with this? Like this is very common everywhere. It exists. Almost all relationships this exists.
All relationships. I think these unspoken expectations that we kind of hold on to in relationships, that he should know or she should know, they should always, like that extreme language can put a lot of pressure on the other person to fulfill something that they're not even aware of, right? तो जब मैं couples के साथ काम करती हूँ, वो कहते हैं well she should know that she should have done X, Y and Z. And then वो फिर कहती हैं कि मुझे आपने बताया नहीं था, तो मैं कैसे करती फिर? अगर आप मुझे बताते कि बच्चों को पिकअप करना था स्कूल से क्योंकि आप बिजी थे जॉब में, तो मैं कर लेती, ठीक है? लेकिन आप मुझे अब बता रहे हैं गुस्से में, and then that's where it escalates the situation.
Right.
Open communication is important, but open communication, again, requires trust and respect. Agar respect nahi hai relationship mein, trust nahi hai relationship mein, then person is not going to feel safe to openly communicate what they want from their partner. Or consistency and reliability bhi nahi hai, to phir communication becomes really, really difficult. So that's why I started with respect and then consistency, trust, and then communication.
Yes. And I think you should be able to manage your expectations as well, right? Sometimes just unrealistic expectations people keep. But I've seen one more thing, that many times people have belief systems around that कि अगर इंसान मुझसे प्यार करता है तो उसे अपने आप पता होना चाहिए. So now there is a belief system as well, right? So what do you think on this? Ki what is the role of belief systems in how people, regulate their relationship and communication? What is the role of these beliefs?
पहले तो मैं बॉलीवुड को पहले acknowledge करूँगी. This toxic love sometimes that is so reinforced by Bollywood. और हम लोग यानी कि बचपन से हम लोग शाहरुख खान को देख रहे हैं, all these like कुछ कुछ होता है and all that, like Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham, which shows really toxic intergenerational patterns in relationships. And then we fantasize these kind of romantic relationships. We fantasize toxic love. ठीक है, तो वो फिर प्रॉब्लम हो जाती है और हम फिर कहते हैं कि ओ ये लव है, ये पैशनेट लव है. Love that is going to make me lose myself, love that is going to make me want to compromise my needs, that's a problem. That's not love. ठीक है. प्यार वो होता है जो आप अपने एक पार्टनरशिप होती है, एक रिस्पेक्ट होती है एक दूसरे के लिए, और एक कॉम्प्रोमाइज होता है. आप कॉम्प्रोमाइज करें कि how can I try to meet my partner's needs, and then also how can I try to ask my partner for what I need from him or her, right? So it's really, really important to first reevaluate the definition of what love is and ask yourself, the initial narrative of love, where does it come from?
Right.
Is that culturally reinforced? Is that Bollywood reinforced or Hollywood? Where does it come from? Where did I even pick up on the idea of this toxic love that I'm fantasizing? And then step back and ask yourself, what are my needs in a relationship? And a lot of times in this passionate love, people don't set boundaries, and that becomes a problem.
Lovely. So what should be the ideal narrative of love in order to have a healthy relationship? How we should define it? Like, you can define it in so many ways. So how do you define love, and how anyone can define it in a healthy way?
Yeah. I think love starts within yourself. If you can love yourself first, you'll know what you are, what you're going to put up with and what you're not going to put up with, right? If you don't love yourself, and if you don't have that healthy self-esteem, it's going to be hard for you to understand the love that you're receiving from the other person, right? Even if you are in a secure relationship, and if you still don't love yourself, I wouldn't say it becomes a toxic relationship, but then you're self-sabotaging that relationship as well. Even if the partner is consistent, reliable, and they're openly communicating, but then if you continue to doubt them, then it's not about them. It's more about you need to reflect on why you're doubting them and why it's still difficult for you to trust them. When factually, looking at facts, they have been consistent, they have been reliable. So self-sabotage can be a very toxic, self-inflicted behavior that can impact your relationships.
So is it like many times it can come out of personal insecurities as well? If the person is insecure, अंदर से अगर insecure है तो वो सामने वाले के उस behavior पे project करने लग सकता है उस insecurity को, doubt भी आ सकता है उसके अंदर.
जी, projection हो सकती है, और ये projection जो है ये built in, it's more of a kind of a developed behavior from past experiences. If you have been in unhealthy relationships in the past, and that's the only pattern you're familiar with, you might repeat that pattern in a secure relationship as well, because then it might be difficult for you to trust this other person who is secure, who is, again, being there for you and fulfilling your needs. So I think it's really, really important to notice, where did I develop this behavior? Where does it come from? Childhood as well. The attachment with your caregiver, the initial attachment, जैसे आपकी mother के साथ हो या father, it's usually the mother who's the caregiver. The first 5 years, that's where we build our attachment. Secure attachment होती है अगर माँ available होती है, बच्चे की needs वगैरह यानी कि fulfill करती है. Anxious attachment when the caregiver is inconsistent and unreliable, and sometimes they'll be available, but then sometimes they might neglect the child's needs. Right? And then avoidant attachment where जो माँ बिल्कुल available नहीं होती है, or it could be because of their own mental health concerns, or they're too busy working, or they're just too caught up with their own, like, let's say, marital relationship issues. तो फिर child जो है वो feel isolate हो जाता है, उनकी needs जो है वो neglect होती हैं. So then child learns a lot of this avoidant pattern in relationships as well.
फिर वो ये पैटर्न वो लाइफ टाइम फिर लेकर के चलते हैं. कई बार ये चाइल्डहुड के इनिशियल जो केयर गिवर्स के साथ जो पैटर्न बना, वो कई बार फिर वो अपने हस्बैंड में या वाइफ में या गर्लफ्रेंड बॉयफ्रेंड में, वहाँ पे भी वो पैटर्न रिफ्लेक्ट होने लगते हैं.
रिसर्च यही शो करती है कि जो हमारे अर्ली अटैचमेंट स्टाइल होते हैं, जो अटैचमेंट बॉन्ड होता है, वो हमारे एडल्ट रिलेशनशिप में फिर रीअपियर करते हैं। तो अगर हम उनको नोटिस ना करें, दैट्स व्हाई इट्स सो इम्पोर्टेंट टू हैव दिस कॉन्वर्सेशन, कि अगर अगर हम उन्हें नोटिस ना करें तो फिर हम उन पैटर्न्स को ब्रेक नहीं करेंगे. So we'll continue with those kind of attachment styles in our relationship. And it's also important to notice that if we become more aware of these attachments within ourselves, then we can also notice what kind of attachment does that my partner have, and can I be that? Can I be with someone who is avoidant? If my mother was an avoidant person and that was really, really difficult for me to cope with, do I really want a partner who's going to be avoidant as well and inconsistent to fulfill my need? Right? So even if I've worked on my secure attachment and the person is so avoidant, my anxious attachment is going to come up. But I need to notice that. And how can I manage it if I want to continue to live with this person who is avoidant? So it really kind of a lot of self-reflection, a lot of kind of observing what's going on within you, your thoughts, feelings, behaviors, understanding the history where these thoughts and narratives come from.
So it means mindfulness or self-awareness, reflection plays a major role in understanding your pattern, because only then we can change, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So many times it's when you love somebody, right? I've seen so many people, they are in relationship, okay, फिजिकल अब्यूज़ हो गया, एक बार हो गया, 2 बार हो गया, डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस हो गई है, कई बार कुछ इमोशनल चीज़ें चल रही हैं, मैनिपुलेशन चल रहा है, बट स्टिल इंसान बार बार कंटिन्यू करता है उस रिश्ते को, ये सोच के कि यार अल्टीमेटली भले ही इसने मुझे यहाँ पे ये अब्यूज़ किया है, लेकिन अल्टीमेटली मुझे प्यार तो करता है. तो वो जो लाइन है वो जो लाइन है लव, किसी से प्यार करना, और सेल्फ केयर जो अपने प्रति जो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, सो वो कैसे इंसान डिसाइड करे कि सेल्फ केयर करना मतलब ये नहीं कि आप सेल्फिश हैं. सो हाउ एनीबडी कैन डिसाइड ऑन दैट, बिकॉज सो मेनी पीपल कम विद दीज क्वेश्चंस विद मी, बट अल्टीमेटली मुझे ऐसे ही लगता है कि मुझे प्यार तो करता है ना, क्योंकि वो बार बार बंदा अब्यूज़ कर रहा है, लेकिन फिर शायद मना लेता है और फिर वापस उस बिहेवियर को वो करता है. तो यहाँ पे एक बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट लाइन आ जाती है कि कब तक एक तो इंसान बर्दाश्त करेगा, और प्लस वो लव और सेल्फ केयर के बीच में और सेल्फिशनेस के बीच में कैसे डिफरेंशिएशन क्रिएट करें.
आई थिंक हमारे कल्चर में एक तो कल्चरल प्रेशर भी काफ़ी होता है कि जो भी हो, यानी कि मैरिज मेक इट वर्क, राइट?
यस, एक फंडामेंटल
है कि देयर इज नो अदर चॉइस, दैट यू हैव टू मेक इट वर्क. पहले शादी हो जाए, मेक इट वर्क, फिर बच्चे हो जाए, अब बच्चों के लिए मेक इट वर्क. लोग क्या कहेंगे? एक तो हमारे लोगों की बड़ी पड़ी रहती है, ना कि अपनी, ठीक है? तो लोग क्या कहेंगे? एक माँ बाप का नाम बदनाम होगा.
सोशल आइडेंटिटी, दे वांट टू प्रोटेक्ट देयर सोशल आइडेंटिटी समहाउ. Even they can sacrifice their kids for that. They can sacrifice anybody. Their social identity is so important for them.
Yes. And because of that kind of desire to hold on to that social identity, they're losing their own identity in that relationship, in that marriage. And that really impacts psychologically the kids. और हम इस बारे में नहीं सोचते हैं कि बच्चों पे कितना impact हो रहा है.
Right.
Yes, you're staying for the sake of kids, but then you guys are doing more harm to the kids by staying in a toxic marriage.
Right. So
बच्चा हमेशा पेरेंट्स को देखता है कि फाइट कर रहे हैं, एक दूसरे की डिसरिस्पेक्ट कर रहे हैं, नेम कॉलिंग, एक दूसरे को गालियां दे रहे हैं. That is not a healthy house to stay in for a child, right? तो बच्चा जब इस environment के साथ familiar हो जाता है, तो वो कहते हैं कि चलो, if that's what marriage looks like, then I'm going to stay in this marriage too, because that is what marriage looks like, because I've seen my parents, right?
Right.
पेरेंट्स एक रोल मॉडल हो जाते हैं, एक मैरिज रोल मॉडल हो जाती है पेरेंट्स की, कि अगर यही मैरिज है तो फिर मे बी दैट्स नॉर्मल.
राइट.
और फिर इस वजह से sometimes some people it's really difficult for them to recognize that it's a toxic marriage.
True. Perfect.
Because that's all they have seen, right? But it's really important to listen to your gut feeling as well. No, abuse is not love.
Right.
And that's not just physical. That's emotional abuse, psychological abuse. It's not love. If the person really loves you, they won't hurt you. They won't cause you pain.
Right. So here, what comes the role of forgiveness in relationship? To what extent somebody should be forgiving, and what should be the parameters of forgiveness? Like how to deal with
That's a
that?
tough
Because
question.
yes, because many times we think that you keep forgiving. So if the person is repeating the same mistake again and again, and if you just keep forgiving, it means you could be exploited as well. So how one should decide that what is the role of forgiveness and how you can forgive in a correct way?
Yeah. That's a difficult question. It's different for each person because of the dynamics of the relationship, how long they've been in a relationship, how often this behavior keeps happening. I think it's important to ask yourself, what's the purpose of forgiveness here? If I have been forgiving this person, what's the function of forgiveness? Is that if I'm forgiving this person hoping that they will change, then that forgiveness, I'm not sure how long that's going to help you to stay in a relationship. So I think first ask yourself, what is my goal? So if I do forgive this person, what am I expecting? What's the outcome? Are there any expectations or are there no expectations? Sometimes we forgive people without any expectations, right? But if it comes with expectations, what are those expectations? Am I communicating those expectations to my partner? And if those expectations are not met, what are the consequences? And am I communicating those consequences to my partner, right?
Right.
So for example, if partner is saying that if you call me this name again, then XYZ will happen. I will leave or I will not tolerate it, and then whatever the boundary is. Yeah. But if you are not respecting your own boundary and you're being flexible with your own boundary, the other person is going to pick up on that. Because if you're not respecting yourself, the other person is not going to respect you. Yeah. So in other ways, forgiveness, if you do forgive and you don't want to repeat the pattern and you want to reevaluate the relationship, then that forgiveness is more for you.
Nice.
If I'm going to forgive this person just for myself, so I can move on with my life and stop repeating these patterns again and again, then that's my way of forgiving the person and choosing myself to not be in this relationship.
True. So that is one form of forgiveness, like, where you have decided to move out, but you're not carrying the grudge inside you, resentment you're not carrying, because you know that ultimately it's going to harm you only. So you just forgive and you move out of the relationship. Or but if you decide, okay, I want to forgive the person, or suppose the person cheated or something, and the overall history of the relationship was such that the loyalty was there, honesty was there. Suppose if you want to give one chance to the person, so what I think is you should see the behavior as well. Is it reflecting in the behavior or not, right? Just because we cannot just blindly trust and forgive. So do you think that it should reflect in the behavior? Is the person making some changes, voluntarily making some changes, so that it can be easily visible in the behavior as well?
Yes. When I work with couples and the reason is infidelity, so cheating or anything, it's hard for them to trust the other person then. But if they're making a choice that they will try to give it a chance, then be true to yourself with that choice first. Because if you're saying that, हाँ ठीक है मैं एक और chance दे दूंगा या दे दूंगी, लेकिन फिर आप वो बंदा अगर वाकई काम कर रहा है and they're really trying to change their behaviors, then give them benefit of the doubt. Don't criticize them. Don't. And I know it's really, really difficult. It's really, really hard. क्योंकि अगर आप उनको फिर trust नहीं कर पाएंगे और time लगेगा. So the other person who cheated has to be patient with the partner, and the partner who is choosing to give another chance also has to be patient, because the trust is gonna build over time, and the trust is only gonna build by the actions of the person who cheated to show that he or she is being consistent, reliable, honest, and that will help them to build their trust.
Right.
क्योंकि a lot of time couples क्या करते हैं, हाँ ठीक है मैं second chance दे रहा हूँ या दे रही हूँ, but then it just becomes more chaos because they're just, well, no, but I don't trust him, or I don't. But look at the facts, look at what he's doing or what she's doing, and really try to give him benefit of the doubt, or her benefit of the doubt.
ट्रू। तो यानी कि एक तो पेशेंस बहुत ज़रूरी है, और एक्शन में कितना एक्सप्रेस हो रहा है, जो आपने एक बहुत अच्छा पॉइंट दिया कि कई बार ऐसे केसेस में मैंने भी देखा है कि जो अदर पर्सन है वो कहता है कि आई एम फॉरगिविंग यू, बट वो सरकास्टिक होता है, बार बार जब मौका मिलता है वो सरकाज़म देता है, वापस याद दिलाता है वो पॉइंट। तो जो ट्राई कर रहा है उसको भी फिर से वो शेम से गुजरना पड़ता है, बिकॉज द पर्सन हु इज़ विलिंग टू चेंज somehow he is going through guilt and shame, he is already dealing with that, right? So अगर बिहेवियर में आ रहा है तो वो ये बहुत अच्छा पॉइंट आपने कहा कि वो एक पेशेंस दोनों को साथ में रख करके आगे बढ़ना पड़ेगा। सो आपके पास जैसे इतने सारे कपल्स और सब आते हैं, तो अगर 3 सबसे बड़े प्रॉब्लम जो आपने देखे कि रेपिटेटिवली कपल्स के बीच में आ रहे हैं, ऐसे 3 अगर आप शेयर करना चाहें जो सबसे ज़्यादा आते हैं, रेपिटेटिवली आते हैं, 3 सबसे बड़े इश्यूज़।
ज़्यादा लोग जब आते हैं तो वो कहते हैं कम्युनिकेशन इज़ अ प्रॉब्लम। जब कम्युनिकेशन नहीं है तो फिर क्या होता है, when I dig a little deeper and ask them, it's actually lack of physical intimacy as well.
Right.
And not being able to spend quality time. Like in a lot of couples, South Asian couples, they're not going to come forth with, we're not having sex. They're not going to talk. They're not going to tell you that right away, right? So as a professional, you really have to kind of understand, okay, communication problem, yeah, like what other problems are happening in the relationship. Physical intimacy happens when there's emotional intimacy. And if emotional intimacy is lacking, then physical intimacy is lacking as well. And a lot of times it's usually around parenting too, if there are kids involved. And then finances, and that's another one, where people have different values and beliefs around finances, but then also parenting and spiritual beliefs, especially if there are differences in caste or differences in religion sects, then that becomes a bit of a problem. And I've seen that within the South Asian community.
Right. I think these 3 are the major which are coming, yes.
Yes.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So, love marriage, arranged marriage or live-in? What do you think? All these 3 forms are like the way of starting a relationship.
Yes.
तो शुरू करने का एक तरीका, लेकिन कंडक्ट करना रिलेशनशिप को वो तो एक अलग ही स्किल हो गई है। So what do you think is the right way of doing it? Which one is starting is the right way?
Oh, I don't even know what's the right way. I wish there was some kind of manual. Okay, step number 1, step number 2, step number 3 is going to lead to a successful marriage or partnership. कोई formula ऐसा है ही नहीं हमारे पास जो हम दें अपने clients को. So I'm not sure if arranged marriages versus love marriage, and then if there is any kind of like successful outcomes for that. So culturally, again, हमारे culture में arranged marriages, they do work out. And love marriages, sometimes they don't work out. Or sometimes love marriages work out, sometimes arranged marriages don't work out. हम जो है सिर्फ बंदे से शादी नहीं करते, हम फैमिली से भी शादी करते हैं. हम गोरों की तरह नहीं है कि चलो एक बंदे से शादी कर ली, then we just deal with that person, that's it. I wish it was like that. लेकिन हम जो है family values, जो the collectivistic culture that we live in, we have to kind of think about everything else that comes with that marriage. So yeah, it's hard to answer whether which type of marriage is going to be successful and never ending.
So yeah, ultimately these are just a way of starting a relationship, right? Conducting is totally different things. So many times people talk about in relationship the idea of soulmate. What is your idea of soulmate? What does it even mean to you? As a psychologist, what does it mean to you?
Yeah. The idea or the concept of soulmate is kind of more, I would say, socially constructed. I think we came up with the concept that there's that one soulmate, but we might have soulmate in our friends as well. We might have soulmate that is maybe our sibling that we can connect with. Soulmate is mainly, can I trust this person to share everything with them? So for example, my best friend is my soulmate. She is that one person that I will definitely go to, and I know that she's not going to judge me. I know that she's going to help me and support me, and she's reliable, consistent. So that she's my soulmate. She's not my partner, right? But she's my soulmate. And I think even when when you're looking for a potential partner, see if they can be your best friend. I think friendship is, if friendship is there in that marriage, that is key. It's a bonus, right? Because then you guys are not just partners, you guys are friends too. So that's just my definition of soulmate, where the person who is a safe person to go to, where you can be vulnerable, you can be yourself.
Yeah, perfect. You know that the person is not going to judge you, and there are some deeper shared values as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
So I think now थोड़ा सा एक टेक्निकल वर्ड पे आता हूँ मैं, NPD. तो कई बार जब रिश्तों की हम बात कर रहे हैं तो many times there are narcissistic people, right? So when somebody, suppose if someone is having a father who is NPD, or husband or a boyfriend who is NPD, or maybe a mother or wife as well. So what are the early signs that many times बहुत समय लग जाता है इंसान को ये रियलाइज़ करने में कि मैं एक NPD इंसान के साथ में रिलेशनशिप में हूँ, और वो ट्रॉमा बॉन्ड जब तक बन जाता है तो फिर इवन आप निकलना भी चाहते हो तो इट बिकम्स वेरी डिफ़िकल्ट. और आई हैव सीन पीपल कई सालों तक वो ट्रॉमा बॉन्डिंग में है और उससे निकलना उनके लिए बड़ा डिफ़िकल्ट हो जाता है. स्पेशली जो यंगस्टर्स हों जो इस पॉडकास्ट को सुने, तो अर्ली ऐसे क्या सिग्नल्स होते हैं, रेड फ्लैग्स होते हैं जिनको ध्यान रखना चाहिए दैट इफ़ यू आर गेटिंग इन रिलेशनशिप विथ NPD, तो what would you give on this?
Yes. Pele, the term narcissistic personality, or narcissism in general, on a spectrum, so it's a personality. It's not, and it becomes a mental health condition when it is to the extreme. We're all narcissistic on a spectrum at some point. Yes.
Just a difference of scale.
It's a spectrum, and we all have some traits of narcissism. Okay, look at social media. यानी कि जितने followers हो या जितना यानी कि likes हो, comments हो, it gives us this kind of like this grandiosity, like self, kind of like, oh, I'm doing better, or I am better, and all of that, right? The narcissistic personality is more kind of looking at grandiosity, where they only think about themselves. सिर्फ अपने बारे में सोचते हैं.
Right.
It's only about their needs. Partner ki needs doesn't matter. It's as long as their needs are met. वो कुछ भी कर लेंगे, जैसे भी कर लेंगे, as long as they get to meet their needs.
Right.
Lack of self-empathy, दूसरों के लिए empathy नहीं होती है. चाहे पार्टनर यानी कि रो रहा हो या यानी कि अपनी concerns को share कर रहा हो, they're not gonna focus on that. They're not gonna meet their needs, and then there's that lack of empathy. A lot of gaslighting happens from narcissistic personality as well. जो they're gonna make you doubt. वो आपको question करेंगे कि यानी कि आपकी needs इतनी important नहीं है, या फिर आप overthink कर रहे हो, या आप overreact कर रहे हो, या dramatic हो रहे हो. ठीक है, क्योंकि they cannot take accountability of what they're doing to the other person. So that lack of accountability as well.
True.
So if you're noticing these things in a relationship, it's really important to just kind of first just notice when you're on these dating apps, do you have any space to talk about yourself? Or is it they're just going on and on about themselves, about their achievement, their accomplishments, and how amazing they are? And is there any room for you to talk about yourself? And when you try to share something that is maybe a little vulnerable, just to kind of test, how do they respond to that? Are they being compassionate? Or they're kind of like brushing it off, or they're not really kind of noticing that you're feeling this way? These are just examples. Again, every person has different experience. I'm not saying that every other person out there is a narcissist, but it's really important. But like you said, if a parent is a narcissist and you've noticed those kind of traits, then maybe sometimes we attract someone like our parent as well.
Yes.
And so be mindful of that, because that can also become a problem.
Okay. Lovely. So, how can person, suppose if the person is already in it, so how they can set boundaries, or how they can, if 3-4 quick hacks you can share that they can apply in their relationship? Because many times if the father is NPD or if the husband is NPD, it becomes difficult to get out of it. So somehow you have to adapt to their behavior. So what 3-4 important things that person can do to protect themselves and at the same time carry on the relationship?
Work on yourself first. I think it's really, really important to know who you are as a person, because when you're with someone who has narcissistic traits, they will make you feel like as if you're not good enough.
Right.
And if you start to believe that you're not good enough, that's when the trauma bonding happens, because then you'll be like, oh, I won't be able to find anyone else, and this person loves me so much. So it will make it really difficult for you to leave the relationship. So love yourself, know who you are as a person, know that you are enough, and your self-esteem shouldn't be tied to their validation and their approval of you.
True.
Or
So
their
true.
love. Yeah. And then also setting boundaries, but the boundaries have to be firm. And people who have narcissistic traits, they do not like boundaries. They will push your boundaries. So having firm boundaries and not being flexible with your boundaries is another way of setting, maybe if you want to stay in the relationship, then that is kind of setting that standard that I'm not gonna give in. I'm not gonna always be meeting your needs. Yeah. Connecting with other people, maybe having a good support system might be helpful as well. So you can share that with your friends in terms of how you're feeling. Going to therapy is another way of dealing with it. A lot of some of my clients who are in a relationship or marriage with someone who's narcissist, and that extra space, safe space, can help them to kind of reevaluate whether they want to stay in the relationship and how are they going to navigate or manage it.
Perfect. I think very crisp techniques, beautifully explained. So I think lots of people are going to be using them. Chaliye, ready?
Sure.
Nilesh, ready? Everybody? Okay, done. So if you could diagnose a fictional character, who would it be and why?
Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gham, Amitabh Bachchan.
Beautiful. So if you could read any celebrity's mind, who would it be and why?
Shah Rukh Khan, because he gets just so much attention and popularity. I'm just wondering how does he manage? How does he get overwhelmed? Is he a narcissist?
Beautiful. So if you were a superhero therapist, what would be your special power?
Fix couples in one session.
Fix couple, Yeah, that's a superpower actually. So what is your go-to series for stress relief and laughter?
Friends.
Beautiful. Favorite music artist and why?
Rahat Fateh Ali Khan. It's because of just the voice. It's there's something about his voice. It's magical.
Journaling or talking about thoughts to close ones?
Talking about thoughts to my best friend.
Lovely. Beaches or mountains?
Mountains.
Forest walk or cozy therapy session?
It has to be one, right? Forest walk.
Nice. If not a psychologist, what would Natasha be doing in parallel universe?
I can see myself as a lawyer.
As a lawyer. What was your childhood dream that is still unfulfilled?
Doing something humanitarian in the South Asian community. I want to open a clinic in Pakistan, but it's not a childhood dream. I would say it's more of a dream now. My childhood dream, I think I've fulfilled that dream, which is me becoming something.
Beautiful. बकेट लिस्ट में से कुछ ऐसा जो आपने सोच रखा है coming time में पूरा करेंगे? Anything in your bucket list that you want to achieve in coming time?
Jumping out of the plane.
Skydiving.
Skydiving. I'm scared of heights, but something that I want
This
to
is the
overcome.
this is the second time one of my friends, Chiranjeev Patel, I asked this question and he also said skydiving. I've done skydiving, so it's an amazing experience. 14,000 feet above. First few seconds, बिल्कुल liberating experience. And after that तो normal हो जाता है. But पहला जो 7-8 seconds है, that is like amazing. So good. This is going to be a good experience. You must do it.
Right.
So if you could go back in time and relive one happy memory, which one would it be and why?
2020 March with my grandmother. That was the last time I saw her, and then she passed away in August because of COVID. That would be the memory I would like to relive.
Beautiful. So what is the most adventurous thing you have ever done?
On my own or with someone?
Anything.
Okay. My first solo trip to Switzerland after I submitted my doctorate thesis. And then since then, I've been traveling solo because I quite enjoy it.
Lovely. And in the last 3, any advice for mental wellness that you want to give people, especially the busy people जो हर रोज हसल में हैं, 3 ऐसे एडवाइस जो आप देना चाहेंगे जो उनको ध्यान रखना चाहिए अपनी मेंटल हेल्थ को बेटर रखने के लिए?
एक है जो mental health check-in on a weekly or on a daily basis. 5 minute लें, अपने आप से पूछे कि how am I actually feeling today? मैंने खाना खाया टाइम पे, मैंने मेरे 8 या 7 घंटे स्लीप के पूरे हुए हैं, और अगर नहीं हुए तो क्या ऐसा हुआ है जो मैंने नहीं किया because I was so busy, or do I want to live this life for the rest of my life? ठीक है. In terms of mood, आज मेरा mood कैसा था? Mood सही था या नहीं था? मैं ऐसे क्या different कर सकता हूँ जिसकी वजह से मैं थोड़ा सा mood मेरा अच्छा हो. अगर मैं काम कर रहा हूँ या कर रही हूँ for the past, like, let's say 2 weeks, and I haven't been able to see my friends, I haven't been able to do any other activities such as sports that I love, okay, then I need to make some changes in my routine. ठीक है? For example, for couples, try to do a couple check-in every week at the end of the week, how things are going. Or I would say maybe on a daily basis as well, 5 minutes, so that way you're not kind of holding it in for the whole week and then escalating the situation at the end of the week. So maybe couple check-in on a daily basis as well, that might be helpful. So yeah, I think those are some of the things. And I think my last encouraging statement, I would say that don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to seek therapy. सिर्फ पागल लोग therapy के लिए नहीं जाते हैं. Therapy can be something that even if nothing is going on in your life, it's just a self-care space for you to develop as a person, to grow as a person. So yeah, that's my last word.
Thank you so much, Natasha. इतना beautifully आपने insights दिए. I think very productive, very deep talks, और आपके expertise से I think lots of people are going to be benefited. So thank you so much for coming and being part of this show. और I think जब हम लंदन आ रहे हैं तो अगर मेरी टीम भी होगी तो we will shoot live as well one episode. ठीक है, so it will be a good experience.
Thank you so much for
think.
having me. It was I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.